So this is actually one of my very first stories I started telling schools, and it's actually been around for a couple of years now, and it's my daughter's favorite story, and she's been begging me every week, Mom, you've got to tell this story. So if you like magic and you like fairies and you like secret caves that lead you into secret worlds, you're going to love this story. So sit back, relax, and get ready to hear The Lady of the Lake. In a small, quaint town in a little city in Colorado, there was a family by the name of the Larsons. And they had a son and they had a daughter, and they were a cute little family that lived in this cute little house in the suburb. Well, the Larsons lived a very humble life. They didn't have a lot of money, but they had lots of friends and they were happy. Well, one night they went to bed. And in the middle of the night, they started to smell something, and pretty soon they started hearing the fire alarm go off. So they jumped out of bed and they ran outside. And they just made it outside when the house actually went up completely into flames and it crumbled. Well, it had all of their things in there. And they didn't have a lot of money, like I said, so they didn't have a lot of resources to build back another house. So instead of crumbling and feeling sorry for themselves, they decided with the little money that they did have that they were going to buy a tent and some camping gear, and they were going to spend the summer figuring out what they wanted to do while camping in the mountains. So one day they put all their stuff together and they load in the car and they start driving through the mountains of Colorado. And pretty soon they come to this long-term camping site where they're able to rent this camping grounds for not a lot of money, and they can stay there for as long as they want. So they find this great spot in this clearing, and it's surrounded by trees, and it's got an opening, and there's a river not far down the road, and so they make camp there. And they get into this nice routine. Each day, they go hiking, they go fishing, they cook by the fire at night, and they have a great time. And they didn't have a lot of rules because out there, life was pretty simple. But the one rule that they did have for their son and daughter was that you are not allowed to go where we can't see you past the camp. So this whole area you can play in, but if we can't see you, you've gone too far. And so the boy and the girl, good kids, they decided, all right, we're good. And so they're playing around the camp. Well, one day they decide they want to play hide and go seek. And so they're going and they're looking for different hiding spots, and they go down this little path, one that they've been down 1,000 times before. And they're going down this path, and pretty soon they look over their shoulder and they realize, oh no, the campsite's gone. We have wandered off and we don't know where we're going. So they go back up this path thinking it's going to lead back to their campsite, but it just makes them wander further and further into the forest. And they wander for a while, all right? And it's starting to get a little dark, and they're starting to panic a little bit because they know they're going to get in deep trouble. But they make their way down this path, and pretty soon they come to this stream. And it's the clearest stream you've ever seen. The water is just so smooth and crisp and clear, and they're so thirsty at this point that they put their hands in there and they start drinking from it. And there are a couple of gulps into drinking the water when all of a sudden they look at each other and they scream because the boys' hands have started to disappear. The girls' hands have started to disappear. Their body is starting to disappear. And pretty soon they could only hear each other, but they couldn't see each other, and they start to freak out. So they both get back on the trail and they run as fast as they can, and they go and they end up finding themselves back to their camp. And when they get there, they start yelling, Mom, Dad, Mom, Dad. But the mom and dad couldn't see them, so they didn't know where the sound was coming from. So the mom and dad are looking around, searching for them. They're worried at this point, but there's nothing that they can do. So the boy and the girl decide we're going to go back to the stream, and maybe if we drink some more water, maybe our bodies will come back again. So they wander back down to the path. And by this point, it is now the sun has gone down and the moon has gone up. And on that very night, it was a full moon. All right. And the boy and girl standing at this lake, and they still can't see their bodies. And so they start panicking when all of a sudden the reflection of the moon on the water gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And as the moon gets higher and higher into the sky and the shadow on the water gets greater and bigger and bigger and bigger, they see this lady, the most beautiful lady, the most beautiful woman they have ever seen, pokes her head up out of the water, and her body starts emerging out of the water, and she starts walking towards them, and they are frozen right in their steps. They don't move, all right? But it seems like this lady can actually see them, and she starts walking towards them. And she gets right in front of them, and she doesn't say anything, but she extends her hand to them. And for some reason, they feel compelled. They grab her hand, and she starts leading them into the water. And they start looking at each other, and they're thinking, we can't breathe underwater. We can't swim. What are we going to do? And she just puts her finger over her mouth, and she walks them And pretty soon, their knees are deep in water, then their waist is deep in water, and then they're up to their shoulders in water, and pretty soon they are fully submerged in the water. And the minute they go underwater, there's this giant cave, all right? And so this beautiful lady starts leading them towards the cave, and they walk through. And they walk through, and it feels like a long time goes by. But pretty soon they see a light at the end of the tunnel, and they walk through, and when they get to the other side of the cave, the tunnel, they're in the most beautiful land they've ever seen. But this is not like any land that you and I have been in before. It's really different. The flowers are the size of my body. The animals are smaller. The bees are bigger. The birds are bigger, and they're flying, and people are flying on top of them. Everything is green. Everything is blooming. The sky is blue. It's the most beautiful place you have ever seen. So the boy and the girl, they look around, and they're fascinated by everything in front of them. And so the lady of the lake says, this is your land now. Do with it as you wish. I just ask that you have respect and you take care of it. Besides that, go out and have fun. So they spend days exploring and riding bees and eating the most wonderful, delicious food that they've ever eaten before. And pretty soon, weeks go by, and they realize that they've lost count of time, and they start missing their mom and their dad. So one day they go up to the lady of the lake, and they said, I'm so sorry. You've been so gracious. You've been so kind. Thank you so much. But I really miss my mom and my dad. I want to go home. And the lady of the lake says, that's fine, brother and sister of the land. I will take you back. Tomorrow is the next full moon. If you'll wait here with me, I'll take you back tomorrow and make sure you find your parents. And so they agreed. So they said all of their goodbye to all their friends and all the people they have gotten to know, and they enjoyed the land one last night. Well, the next day comes, and the moon starts to come up and the sun starts to go down, and the lady of the lake meets them right outside the cave. And she said, are you sure? And they said, we're sure. We miss our mom and our dad. We're ready to go back. She goes, okay, well, you're always welcome here. And so she walks them through the cave, and just like before, they start walking through the water, and pretty soon they're emerging out of the water. And the minute that they go out of the water and the moon is at the top of the sky, they're able to see their bodies again. They're able to see their skin, their flesh, their eyes, and they are so happy and overjoyed that they run all the way back to their camp, hoping that their mom and their dad are still there. So they make it back to the camp, mom, dad, and pretty soon the mom and the dad run around the other campsite, frantic to see them, and they spot them, and they start crying, and they start hugging them, asking, where have you been? We've worried for you. We've had rangers, we've had people looking for you for weeks now. We thought something bad had happened to you. And they said, we knew you wouldn't believe us unless you see this for yourself. So you have to come with us. And they were hesitant at first, but they said, well, you've been gone for so long, I've got to see where you've been. So they take their hands and they walk them back to the edge of the lake. And standing right there is the lady of the lake. And mom and dad freeze. And they don't know what to do. And the lady of the lake walks up to them and says, your son and your daughter have shown great compassion and respect for my land. I also heard about what happened to your house. So I would love, if you're willing, for you guys to come and take care of my land. And the mom and the dad said, what does that even mean? She goes, just come with me and I'll show you. So the mom and the dad and the boy and the girl, they all join hands and they start walking inside the water, and they start walking, and eventually they're completely submerged under the water. Well, no one ever sees that family again. All right. Many people say that the family went into the other land and they're now the protectors of that land and of that lake, and that they come and they're constantly watching people, making sure that they're taking care of their surroundings. But no one's ever seen them again. So we don't know really what happened to them. But it is said that if you're in that campground, now I don't know the exact camping ground because they never really said it when I was Googling about unsolved mysteries in Colorado, but there's this certain campground. And if you're there, and if a full moon comes about and you happen to wander up to the lake, that supposedly the lady of the lake comes out of the water, and she may grant you passage through the cave for the night. But no one knows. So my question for you is, do you think this story is true? Do you think there's this magic lake that has this cave that takes us into another land? What happened to this family? No one knows for sure, but that's the great thing about folktales. Sometimes we may never find out what happens, but it keeps our brains working and our minds working, and maybe, just maybe, one day we'll fall into one of these magical stories as well.